causes of industrial disputes, what are the different forms of industrial dispute, how one can go for its settlement, and what are the proposed changes which has been brought about in our Industrial Relation Code 2020. So after hearing all these things, one will be able to understand the concept, the types, the effect of conflicts, and the approaches to conflict resolution, the causes and the forms and the settlement. So to start with, when we talk about conflict, in any environment you may operate, or any institution which where you may work, or the organization where you work in different capacity, conflict, I would say, cannot be avoided. It is because due to the differences among individual ideas and differences due to individual desire, differences due to individual perceptions, differences due to individual needs. Because in the home front also, you must have seen that we have conflicts. So how it cannot be in the organizational setting, organizational context. So what I mean to say that in this case, one has to be very, very serious so far as resolution is concerned, because if the same is persisting in the organization over a period of time, that may create a setback. The organization may be a casualty because of that. So there are different other differences also there, particularly when we look at the business world, such as the different situations, different experiences, different um, environment we come across, the personality, the peer group differences. So such characteristics, they also cause differences in needs, they cause differences in values, they cause differences in beliefs, they cause differences in our even personal attitudes. So conflict was defined by Hawker and Will Montaigne way back in 1985 as some kind of expressed struggle between at least two interdependent parties who perceive some kind of limit, perceive some kind of interference from the other. So if we go for giving a befitting explanation to industrial conflict, one of the most influential explanation of industrial conflict is suggested by the work of Human Relations School. And you know that the viewpoint has its own origin in the Hawthorne experiment, when we have all read in the evolution of management schools of thought. And Elton Mayo is the pioneer for that, though it has gone considerable revision since then that time. But the central idea in which most of the writing is based is the importance of informal relationship, the importance of your good communication, is the importance of your supervision. And when I say supervision, supervision to improve employee morale, supervision to improve your efficiency, supervision to improve your job satisfaction. Because some of these views have been criticized also by the Marxist, pluralist, and other, on the ground that it encouraged more dependency and it discouraged individual development, and as a result of which ignored the importance of technology in the industry, the importance of culture in the industry. So conflict classifies, in fact, the goal-seeking conflicts between the participants in an industry into three combinations one can have. So one is conflict over the same, you can say, over the same goal, and which is sought by both the employer and the union, and the conflict which is originating from seeking different goals, which is perceived as incompatible. For example, the important goal of union is job security, but employers in that case may perceive this as conflicting because with their attempt to obtain efficiency and higher profits. And another case, that is your conflicts over the means through which the goals are to be reached. So there are different types of conflict, as a matter of fact, and these types one can look at the interpersonal conflicts, the intrapersonal conflict, your interpersonal conflict, your intra-group conflict, your intergroup conflict, and your intra-organizational conflict, your inter-organizational conflict. When you are talking of intrapersonal conflict, this conflict occurs within the person himself, and it arises within an individual when his motives, when his drives are blocked. Well, you may have when a person faces two different decisions and cannot take appropriate decisions, as he faces competing objectives, as he faces competing roles. So the conflict within the individual is usually related to value, where there is no, I would say, conformity between his role and his values and beliefs. But in that case, you have approach conflict, because that will arise when two or more alternatives with positive consequences. And in this type of situation, a person has the choice between these two alternatives and seem to be equally attractive. And there can be avoidance conflict. This conflict is a situation where a person has to select one of two or more alternatives with negative outcomes. You can have approach avoidance conflict. This conflict that happens in a situation where an individual should choose something with positive and negative results. So person chooses normally to accept a nice job, positive, in an undesired place, that is negative. So if we look at the interpersonal conflict, it is probably the most recognized and popular conflict which arises between two or more individuals. In fact, this is what most people they associate as conflict in an organization, because it can happen because of the differences that occur between two people. And this conflict may happen between two managers, and these two managers who compete for limited manpower or limited capital resources, or they compete for the same promotion. So that is your interpersonal conflict. And when we talk about this intra-group conflict, obviously it happens when a person who is working in a group as a member to achieve a different goal other than the group in the organization. So this type of intra-group conflict happens at the organizational level. So it is normal that all groups, both your formal group, your informal group, they always tend to establish some kind of particular operational standards and particular behavioral principles, which are also adhered to by all the members of the group. So a member may have social needs, no doubt about it, but oblige him to stay within the group, but simultaneously he may not agree with the group's goals and the way means required for achieving such type of goal. Similarly, when you talk about intergroup conflicts, this type of conflict normally they arise between different groups in an organization. And you will notice that each group seeking to accomplish their objective, and they are called as intergroup conflict. And when we look at the organization, organizations are very composed of interlocking networks of sections, interlocking network of work teams or the departments or the individuals, whatever it may be. But the fact remains that in all these cases, the individuals they tend to form various groups, and when there is a demand for that, obviously, therefore, the intergroup conflict may not be too much naturally personal, and the harmony for which we are more concerned about among all interdependent groups It is all considered as an essential factor for the organization as a whole. Similarly, when we are talking of this intra-organizational conflict, it has got four types, including your vertical conflict, horizontal conflict, line and staff conflict, and role conflict. And they have all distinct features, however, they cannot overlap, and particularly with the role. While horizontal conflicts happen among the departments or among the staff with a similar organizational hierarchical levels, but in addition to line and staff conflict, as line department are always assisted by your staff department in most of the organizations. So there is a relationship between line and staff departments. Upon that, the relationship creates conflict, and the role conflict that we are more talking about, the roles, a set of actions that are all expected to be performed by the individual in their positions. Similarly, when we look at this inter-organizational conflict, uh, obviously this type of conflict hap- happens between organizations, which I would say to some extent depend on each other. So all conflicts inherent in the organizational levels, involve the conflicts that occur at the individual level or the group levels. So if there is conflict, obviously it cannot be free from anything. So there are certain effects of conflicts. So you can have negative effects of conflict. So if we prepare a short list of negative effects, obviously um, within the individual that I am talking of. So one thing that will come in the form of psychological responses, and when we look at the psychological responses, uh, people, employees are there absent-mindedness to other things which are not important for them. Assign them. There is lack of interest to work. There will be tremendous amount of job dissatisfactions, and you will experience work distresses, estrangements, and alienations from others, and your disappointments will always be there. That is from your psychological responses. If I look at the behavioral aspects, the behavioral responses, your conflict may enforce the individuals to behave in unusual matter, such as you'll go for excessive smoking, you'll go for excessive drinking alcohol, and always you'll be hostile towards others, and there will be decreased communication with others, and always you resist influence attempts. So it has its own cost, like wasting of time, like your it has its own cost, such as employees they leave the organizations, high employee turnover, they go for sabotage, there will be health cost associated with to your individual. So in a conflict situation, an individual, when we look at, may tend to achieve and promote what his own self-interest, his own personal gain, and all these things will be happening at the cost of the organization or others. Similarly, taking most of the time bad decisions and tending to go for some kind of unnecessary restructuring or not warranted, and there will be lack of job motivation, and you will experience low motivation. These are all negative effects of conflict. And if we look at the positive effects of conflict, obviously, conflict has several benefits, including it stimulates individuals to exert more efforts and to work hard. In conflict situation, people normally they use their abilities, they use their skills, they use their talents, and it may also satisfy the particular psychological requirements, such as your dominances, such as psychological requirements, such as your aggressions or your esteems or egos, accordingly gives chances for some kind of constructive uses and releases your aggressive urges. So it gives some kind of productive ideas, it gives some kind of creative ideas. For instance, if we look at the benefits that the employees receive nowadays, they are all the outcomes of the management union conflict during the last decades. So conflict that contributes social changes also and facilitates your mutual understanding of the problems among the individuals in conflict. So conflicts among the groups, they in fact create units between the group, and they increase cooperation as they uh, start working to achieve the popular goals of the groups for the outcomes of these conflicts. So again, they may also inspire creativity because conflicts are exploited by several organizations as a chance to look for effective solution to problems, and members can also be inspired by the conflicts for your brainstorming, whereas considering the problems from different perspectives. There will also be share of opinions, respect of for the opinions. So it is the opportunity which is provided to the members of the organization to contribute their own viewpoints and with the individuals of the other groups. So conflict can bring the members of the organization together to actively listen to each other and share their views, experiences as they work to achieve the organizational objectives. And apart from that, also your conflicts they serve to discourage premature group decision making. So in the processes of making decision, I would say this forces participants to discover the need when they are sought, the issues when they are sought. So conflicts, in fact, allow for the understanding of the outcomes of the parties and responsible for causing some kind of agreements and benefits the interest of both the parties with their organization, with their relationship. And with these effects, let us now go over to the approaches to conflict resolution. In fact, when we are talking of conflict resolution is a process, and it is a process of resolving a dispute. It is a process of managing the dispute by sharing each side's needs, by looking at each side's needs, and it is a process of adequately, in fact, addressing their interest so that they are satisfied with the outcome. So, if we look at the resolution methods, there are five conflict resolution methods. One is negotiation and bargaining. Another is your coercion, and the third one is your mediation, and the fourth one is your adjudication, and the fifth one that is your arbitration. So when we talk about the resolution of the conflict as your negotiation and bargaining, here what will happen that the parties to the conflictful situation, they are all involved in a process of discussion. And when they are all involved in the process of discussion, which seeks to bring about a voluntary agreement. So you reach a consensus, there should not be any scope for disagreement. But when you take resolution as your coercion, so this is another method of conflict resolution, no doubt about it. But the parties involved in conflicts, they are all forced to agree to a particular conclusion. So here, when we are talking of the force, it is the physical force, or there can be also be threat of physical force. can also be sometimes used to solve the conflict. So at least all these things should happen temporarily, and the success of the course will depend on your authority and the legitimacy of the person uh, or the entity exerting the course. And the third conflict resolution method, that is your mediation. Here it uses a third party and to help the conflicting parties, so that the conflicting parties they come together on a mutually satisfactory agreement. And your mediation is always assisted negotiation, voluntary, no doubt about it, on both the sides, and that is very much private and confidential. Here, the disputes are and the not the mediator. We are more concerned about the dispute, not the mediator, and take the responsibility for the outcome. Here, the disputes and not the mediator take the responsibility for the outcome. And the fourth resolution method, that is your adjudication. So, in the adjudication, it enlists the power of the state and its legal system, prevailing legal systems, to provide an authoritative conclusion. And typically, in the this is an expensive and lengthy way to end a dispute, because adjudication is often used along the coercion and negotiation. And the fifth resolution method is your arbitration. And when we are talking of arbitration as one of the conflict resolution method, it involves an impartial third party to decide, and this involvement through proper mutual consent, the keeping in view the what are the issues in the dispute. So this party makes the authoritative final decision to which all the disputes must adhere. So, in all these cases, when we are talking of these are the five different conflict resolution, the mechanism through which we can get rid of the conflictful situations. Then, what are the conflict resolution styles? Whenever you know that two or more people they come together, obviously they either come together or they work together. There will be a possibility of disagreement among them, and this disagreement can be opportunity for the growth. This disagreement can be an opportunity for the purpose of learning, and they may become damaging to the parties involved and the organization to which they serve. Here to deal with conflict, I'm of the opinion that consistent ability and consistent skill are very much required. So there are different methods to manage conflict when we are talking of conflict resolution styles. So one method is your avoidance. What is that avoidance all about? One way we talk about avoidance, and when we talk about avoidance, it is the avoidance of style. This can be best described as non-confrontational, and a person passes over an issue, or you may say totally the person ignores the person with whom he is in conflict. He might not even agree that a particular issue is a problem. The second method or you can say the second resolution style, that is your accommodating. A person, what he is doing, he is using the accommodating style for his behavior. That is agreeable, that is non-assertive. So the person cooperate even in the you may talk about at the expense of the personal goals. Another resolution style is your win-lose style. This is something which is uh, always being um, seen from the conflict, classic conflict point of view, during which a person uh, is confrontation or confronting, aggressive. Person is aggressive. Person is very much prone to confrontation. Person is very much aggressive and win at all cost. So he totally, I would say, disregard the needs of other problems. And another, your resolution style is your problem solving skill. Because in most of the cases, what we have observed that this is something which is also known as your collaboration. It is used when both partners they have a high degree of respect for each other, and they always do consider the need of other persons. And the fifth resolution style would be your compromising style. A person is using the compromising style when he is both assertive and cooperative. So in the process, the person gives up something in order to give something else, and only we partially satisfied. So in the industrial dispute, there are certain definitions normally we come across which are also being used in the context of industrial dispute. And in fact, when we are looking at the, the term industrial dispute has been interpreted differently when we are using the term industrial dispute. That has been analyzed also differently in different cases, in different situations by Supreme Courts and some of the principle to judge the nature of the disputes. They are all evolved by the Supreme Court. So, considerable section of the employees should necessarily make some cause and the general lot. And the dispute should invariably be taken up by the industry union or by any appreciable member of the workmen. And the parties to the dispute, and here it must have um, different direct or interest or the substantial interest in the disputes. So that is how we always talk about the the concept, giving various definitions of industrial disputes as and when the term being utilized for the purpose. Now, coming to the international organizations and disputes, normally in short we call it as ILO. So, if you look at the preamble and the constitution of your ILO code, where very categorically it is mentioned that whereas universal and lasting peace can be established, only it is based on social justice. Whereas the conditions of labor, it exists involving some injustice, involving some hardship, issues like mm, privatization of the different large number of organization to take place. So all these things, when we are talking of, so we always go for some kind of programs, and you have uh, contracting parties. They move sentiments of justice, humanity, as well as by the desire to secure the permanent peace of the world. And these are all happening with a view to attaining objectives, and which is set forth in this preamble, and it gives to the confrontation of the international level organization, uh, so far as there are different programs envisaged on the lines of the principle of reaffirmed, I would say, in the 26th session of Indian Labour Organization, which was held in Philadelphia way back in 1944. So, two things. One is your employment, and second is your workers. And the employment, the workers, in the cooperation, I would say, uh, apart from whatever occupation they must be holding, in which they try to handle the situations of giving fullest measure and of other. And apart from that also, when we look at the policies with regard to wages, when you look at policies with regard to earnings, of all these things, or the hours of number of hours being utilized for the purpose of uh, get rid of the conflictful situations. And there are also effective recognition of the right of the collective bargaining, because you know that the cooperation to the management and the labor in the continuous improvement that we are following, continuous improvement of your efficacy and continuous improvement of your efficiency and the collaboration, but collaboration of the uh, workers, collaboration of the employers, that too in the preparation of social measures, in the preparation of economic measures, and so all the applications need to be considered, and adequate protection to the life and health of the worker condition is concerned, because the fact that they try to earn more money, but which is not legal, and when they come back, so they always try to maintain the same, but which is difficult to maintain the same. So there should be provision of adequate nutrition also, and housing all part also, provision for you can say um, deadlock is there. So you take on behalf of the management, and when you go there, you make the deliberation, and these disputes are arranged and drive out your deadlocks in the negotiation for a collective agreement. And now coming to the classification of industrial disputes, the ILO, International Labour Organization, in its conciliation of your industrial disputes in Indian Constitution 1 1980, it refers to there are main two types of disputes relating to the terms of employment, whether 60 or 40 or 13 or 15. So the first is your interest disputes. They are called the conflict of interest, and or we call them as economic disputes, or you may call as your collective labor disputes, because these disputes they always try to solve the greater interest, as it was all proposed by Henry Poyle, subordination of individual interest, subordination of good, subordination of individual interest to the common good. Why do we say so? Because we have to see that the disputes arise out of your deadlock in the negotiation for a collective bargaining should happen. Similarly, you have a right to grievance disputes, and these disputes are also known as conflict of interest. These disputes are otherwise known as conflict of rights, rights, legal disputes. So these disputes arise from your day-to-day operation, day-to-day workers' grievances, day-to-day workers' complaints. So in addition, there are two other types of disputes, and all those disputes relating to organizational rights and organizational name. So the fact remains that when you are talking of the disputes over unfair trade practices, these are the disputes. They are all known as trade union victimizations. So you don't resort to any kind of practices which is not fair. Similarly, another industrial dispute is there, that is your recognition disputes. These type of disputes arise. There, these type of dispute arises when the management of an undertaking, be it big, be it small, or an, you can say employees organization, they all refuse to uh, recognize, not to recognize a trade union, also for the purpose of your collective bargaining. So, with this, when we talk about the industrial issues classification, starting from the interest dispute, rights disputes, disputes over legal uh, home, uh, disputes over unfair trade practices, and uh, disputes over, when we are talking of unfair trade practices, trade union victimization is there, and there are recognition disputes, and these type of dispute will arise when the management of an undertaking of an employers or of an organization is trying to recognize a trade union for the purpose of collective bargaining. So, after hearing all these things, it will be essential to know that what are the causes of industrial dispute. If we look at the causes, conflict is inherent in a situation for at least four reasons. As I told you earlier, a little while ago, the desire of the parties, they are more or less unlimited. While the means means of satisfaction, they are limited. That is why dispute will surface. There is also an eternal opposition of interest between the employers and the workers, which may be made bearable, but it can never eliminated in a complex or industrial society, in a complex industrial society. And the industrial society is not static, rather they're dynamic. So situations, they keep on changing, and situations keep on changing due to various factors. And in fact, if the management, the labor, they are to retain their institutional identities, in that case, they are to disagree and must act on agreement. No, how can it be on agreement if management and labor are to retain the institutional identities? Obviously, they are to disagree and must act on disagreement. So, in general, if I look at the sources which give rise to your industrial disputes, they can broadly divided into um, uh, causes, and the causes can be internal and the external causes broadly. And when I am talking of internal causes, obviously, which concern only the employer and the employee within an industry or within a farm. Those farms, they, in combination, they create a particular industry. And if we look at the external causes, obviously, the which emanate from outside the industry and which concern all the industries in the country. So internal causes can be from wages, can be in terms of working condition, can be in terms of fear of insecurity. And apart from that, also your personal sources. When I say personal sources, could also be the internal cause, such as your bad personnel administration, like there will be dismissal of workers. Somebody got victimized on account of being the member of the union. Then there will be maltreatment of workers by the officers, the executives, and non-recognition of the trade unions, so that in the bargaining table they cannot participate. Another internal cause is your psychological sources, and when we are talking of psychological sources, such as there will be a denial of opportunity to the worker for satisfying his wage. Sometimes also modern mass production technique have made the task of production monotonous over a period of time and has removed the opportunity for the worker. And this is for using his skill, this is for using individual judgments. And another psychological, when we are talking of causes, the cause of dispute is the frustration. And the frustration that will come in the mind of the worker and arising out of the unsatisfied desire for the personal achievement, for the personal betterment. And the fourth one of your fourth is the fourth of your internal cause, the perception in the mind of the society. And the industrial worker is a, you can say, person, but he's a person of no importance. So this perception has serious consequences. This perception definitely has created uh, the progress which should have not have been which should have been there, but the organization did not see it. So perception in the mind of the society that the industrial worker being a person of no importance, and the perception has serious consequences on the worker's relation with the employer. But if we look at the external causes, you start with the political causes, important political factors, and those factors they give rise to your labor unrest, labor strike. So they are your repugnant legislative measures. You go for arrest of any popular political leader having political link, or there is overthrow of the present political order, or you raise your voice in the management of farms, and you share the projects. So along with this classification and the causes that we discussed about, causes of industrial disputes, if we search, if we probe one thing, the subject matter of disputes, obviously we find the factors are culminated into disputes, starting from your demand for higher wages through bonus and finally ending up with your retrenchment or layoff. So apart from these, there are other causes, those causes which are also equally important, which are important factors for causing industrial disputes. There can be demand for accommodation, and that may include your medical facilities, that may include your leave travel allowance, that may include that inappropriate, I would say, treatment by the superiors. So they try to see the subordinates working hard as a machine, not as a human being. So there will be. So with this, let us discuss something about the forms of industrial actions. When we talk about conflict, conflict is just like endemic to the industrial society. So notwithstanding the advantages of your labor management cooperation, the interests of the labor and the interests of the management usually seem to be opposed. And conflicts may either be sustained or organized, or they'll be sporadic and unorganized. So the result is industrial action, which has already been created, and that is both on the part of the labor, on the part of the management, and some common forms of your industrial action that is seen through your absenteeism, that is seen through your work to rule, that is very much seen through go slow, your picketing, or your gherav, or you may say the bond strike, demotion, layoff, your retrenchment, termination, lockout list is very, very not extensive to that extent. You can also prolong the list. So these are the different forms of industrial actions one can see. So when there is dispute, there are styles, there are approaches, there are forms. Is not it? One should also talk about its settlement. And what is the settlement of industrial dispute in India? So in a country like India, where labor is neither adequately nor properly organized, unqualified acceptance of the doctrine of free enterprise, particularly between labor and management, strengthens the bargaining position of already powerful management. So, in order, therefore, to protect the interests of the community as well as the labor management, we have legislatures, and it has found it necessary to intervene in labor management relation. So we have various statutory machineries, we have various voluntary machineries which have been set up in India. So statutory settlement machinery. So we have Industrial Dispute Act 1947, which was enacted with a motto, with an objective to promote industrial peace, to promote industrial harmony by providing appropriate machinery for some kind of amicable settlement of disputes, amicable settlement of disputes arising between employers and employees. And here, when we are talking of Industrial Disputes Act 1947, the, the principal purpose is to promote certain measures to secure cordial relations between labor and management. The purpose is to investigate. There should be investigation and settlement of industrial disputes. Machinery is already provided, and there should be prevention of illegal strike. There should be prevention of lockouts, adequate provisions of relief in the matters of layoff, adequate provision of relief in the matter of retrenchment is also there. So the Act provides for the constitution of various authorities to preserve industrial harmony, and at the lowest level, that is the work committee. So there are various machineries for the investigation purpose, for the settlement of industrial disputes, and the machineries are your conciliation, your court of inquiry, your adjudication, your voluntary arbitration. So quite apart from all these statutory machineries, there are also several non-statutory machineries. Non-statutory machinery like your code of discipline, your joint management council, your tripartite machinery, your joint machinery, consultative machinery also there, because they play an important role in the process of preventing industrial dispute, in the process of settling industrial disputes. So when we look at the all these committees, they are very much into their jobs. If we look at the works committee, so it was meant to create, to promote measures for securing and preserving amity and good relation between the employers and the workmen, meant to create a sense of partnership between the employers and the workmen, more concerned about, it is more concerned with problems arising in the day-to-day basis working of the establishment to ascertain the grievances. Similarly, you have grievance settlement authorities. Indian Labour Conference has given the right to observe that whenever there is a complaint affecting one or more individuals, workers, in respect of their wage payment or in respect of their overtime or transfer or promotion or seniority or work assignment or the working conditions, where the points of dispute are of general applicability. or considering the magnitude, they will fall outside the scope of grievance procedure. And in all these occasions, the voluntary code of conduct adopted by the 16th session of the Indian Labour Conference in 1958 provides that the management and union will establish mutual agreed basis, that grievance procedure, and which will ensure speedy investigation, which will fill investigation leading to final settlement, and all will abide by the various stages by the in the grievance procedures. And there is also another settlement, that is your conciliation, and that is most frequently used for settling disputes. It is a persuasive process, rather I would say, for the purpose of settling industrial dispute. And in conciliation, it is a process where you have a third party intervention will be there who will persuade dispute and to for equitable adjustment of claims. Similarly, you have Board of Conciliation, and the Board of Conciliation is a judicial capacity. In a judicial capacity, they enjoy more power than conciliation. So, under this Act, every Board of Conciliation, in fact, they enjoy the same power, which are all vested in the Civil Code under the Code of Civil Procedure 1908. And similarly, you have also a court of inquiry. Court of inquiry is another authority which has been set up by government under Industrial Dispute Act 1947. And the purpose for inquiry into the matter and those matter connected with a dispute. So the act enables the person or the minister in his own motion, irrespective of the consent of parties to a dispute, to set up a court of inquiry to inquire into the report, whatever report received on the causes, whatever report received on the circumstances, trade dispute, and these are all together with such recommendation as the court may make for the purpose of resolution of the dispute. And this act all empowers the appropriate government to constitute this court of inquiry to inquire into the matter and those matter which are appearing to be connected with relevant to an industrial disputes. So in all cases, what we have seen that there is also another voluntary arbitration, that is also one of the effective mode, I would say, so far as settlement of industrial dispute is concerned, because this voluntary arbitration supplements your collective bargaining. When negotiation fails, your arbitration may prove to be satisfactory and most enlightened method or resolving an industrial dispute. So it provides a new focus for setting up animosities and winning party is satisfied and the losing party is likely to feel aggrieved, affected, not at the other party, but at the arbitrator. So it is because expected to take into consideration the realities of the situation. It is expected to meet the aspirations of the parties. It is based on voluntarism. So another is your adjudication, that is compulsory adjudication, or the adjudication, that is the final stage of settlement of the industrial disputes, where parties are unable to settle either through bipartite negotiation or through good, they are using their good offices for the conciliation machinery or through voluntary arbitration. So now you go for compulsory arbitration, which encompasses your governmental intervention, references to the statutory bodies like your labor court, or we have industrial tribunal, we have national tribunals. They come into picture for the purpose of settlements. And we have also non-statutory settlement machineries like your joint management councils. And in all these cases, also you have code of discipline, you have tripartite consultative machineries. And apart from that, also basic function of your ILs is to promote uniformity in labor legislation. lay down the procedure for the settlement of the industrial disputes to discuss all matters of the all India importance as between the employers and the employees. There is also a standing labor committee's main function is to consider and determine such questions which may be referred to by the plenaries of the central government and to render advice, taking into account all suggestions made by the various governments, work, the employers, all taken together. So over a period of time, there has been proposed changes as per the provision contained in the Industrial Relations Code 2020. But the proposed Industrial Relation 2020, which has been adopted by the Parliament, assented by the President of India, but not implemented till 28th of February 2022, certain changes have been made in the existing machinery for the purpose of settling of industrial disputes. So the provision of labor court as an adjudication machinery under Industrial Dispute Act 1947, in fact, has been removed, and only Industrial Tribunal and National Tribunal has been remained as your adjudication machinery under the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So with this, we come to an end of today's session. Thank you very much. Nice time. Good day.